Thank you all for listening to the replay and all our audience who join us live. Let's dive in. I just want to give a little introduction for a very special guest, Charlotte Hartley. Special in many ways. Special not just as a human and an amazing teacher, but also another powerful woman creating a healing resources for children in UK and for children around the world. So here we go. Please help me.
Lovely introduction too. That's so kind of you.
And I didn't even start it. I just went a little bit there. It was like the beginning before the ta da 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 ta da da da. Please help me to welcome Charlotte Hartley, the founder and CEO of briym, Building Resilience in Young Minds, who has dedicated over 25 years to education and mental health. Charlotte is a former secondary school teacher and successful head of the year. She transitioned into mental health field after recognizing the growing need for support among students struggling with anxiety and other mental health issues. She has helped over 16,000 children, 4,000 teachers, and 4,000 parents. I mean, how amazing it is. And today we are going to talk about those stories behind those numbers and how to change the system around schools, children. How can we be part of this amazing movement happening? Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you for not just joining this live, but also all the work you have been doing for the last how many years it has been?
Thank you so much. Yeah, so briym has been around for about 8 to 10 years, really. So yeah, about 10 years really for that, and then before that, 25 years. You're right, teaching too.
I would like to also welcome our new audience members and please forgive me the pronunciations of your names. I'm originally from Poland, so my accent is also additional asset, I guess. Welcome Shodi Hutul and San. Welcome. So happy you're here. Please, if you can, share the three dots above to share the event, invite your friends. We are going to talk about how to change the system, specifically about mental health of children and how. Oh, actually, Charlotte, how do you feel about sharing, making introduction more about what's the problem and what's the solution when it comes to children, their childhood, and how it impacts their childhood, how that impacts their adulthood, and everything.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think being a child is quite difficult, and I think actually now I think it's more difficult than it's ever been. I have worked with children for a really long time, and I think they're wonderful. I think about how when babies are born, they're only born with two fears. One fear they're scared of loud noises, and the other fear is that they're scared of falling. And they're the only two natural fears that, as a human being, that we're born with. And everything else that we grow up to be in fear of or anxious about are things that we've learned, or that we've taught, or we've learned from other people. And I think children's brains are so wonderful and so creative and so impressionable, but also, this golden, wonderful light of just joy. And I think, sometimes things happen to them, or the way society is maybe treating them, that things start to change. And I sort of really am interested in how our youth creates the human being, the adult we become, and the situations that we're in, could that be a result of some of the things that we do as an adult that maybe don't help us, or, also things that do help us, and the things that are really powerful, the people we become. So when I was teaching, I loved that, and I loved being part of children's kind of education. And I do wonder whether we are teaching children the right thing anymore. It's great to know knowledge, but also I think that we need to start trying to develop creativity. And also the thing that I am hugely passionate about is helping young people understand more about their brain. Really teaching about the brain and what's going on, so that young people and adults actually are aware of their emotions, so that they know what they can control and what they can't control. And emotions that feel like they're so overwhelming sometimes, having techniques to allow themselves to control them. And that's what we do at briym. So we're all teachers, and we are all passionate about allowing young people to develop and grow and thrive and really understand their brain, and then to create, sort of to empower them to create a toolbox of techniques, so that they can, whenever they're not feeling great, they can call upon the techniques, and they can allow themselves to feel better quicker. And I think this should be part of all children's education, that we should be empowering them about their emotions. Anxiety now in the UK after COVID, before COVID, they suggested the statistics were 1 in 6 young person had some form of mental health disorder, and after COVID, they're now saying it's 1 in 3, and in such a short space of time, for things to be, to have doubled, really, it's incredible that 1 in 3 children has a mental health disorder of some form.
Wow.
Whether that's anxiety or something completely different, but it's obviously an epidemic in a sense. And actually, we really need to support children to understand what their brain is going through and the developments that they're going through, to try and change the way that they feel about themselves and about life and about the world. And how we can really support these young people to feel better and to grow and thrive and be the wonderful human being that they are.
Mm. Mm. Well, thank you for bringing the statistics of, what you mentioned, 1 in 3 children has experienced anxiety or some depression or another mental issues. I mean, that's huge, like realizing 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And those are,
Yep.
I bet those are just people who reported, during some research questionnaire. Um, I mean, how can we, how does briym work for the rest of us? Like for the teachers too, but also for how the society can help children transition in those moments to develop less anxiety and have better start in adulthood.
So at briym, we work with schools and we work with parents, and we teach young people about the brain, and I think that's a really good place to start.
Yeah.
To help young people, and we work with children from as young as 4 years old all the way up to 18, while they're doing their A levels. But actually, we also work with people that are older, young people at university or anyone who's struggling. And they now think that our brain isn't fully developed to an adult brain until we're about 27. So your brain is still changing throughout all those years when you're perceived to be an adult. And actually, I really think young people need to know that. They need to understand that, why can I wake up some days and feel anxious? What's happening in my brain? And I think, I remember, I know we're talking about COVID a little bit, but I remember when COVID happened, how anxiety levels just grew so much. The first time in our lives where we're being told we can't do things and we had to stay home, and you didn't really know what was going to happen, and people were dying, and how scary that was, and how people's anxiety levels just rose so much. And I'm not sure that we've kind of learned how to reduce them again. And I think about children, watching adults' anxiety levels rise, and their brains that were so, impressionable and malleable at that time, sort of watching someone that they loved and they would, try, in a sense, learn from, seeing their parents be anxious, I really think that had a huge effect on young people. And they believe that really, like rationing after the war, there was about 12, it took 12 years for rationing cards to be kind of not used anymore. And they believe that actually it's going to be the same sort of thing with the mental health kind of struggles of young people. Now they think sort of 12 years after COVID, really. So at Brim, we talk about all these things a lot because I do think knowledge is power. And when young people can understand what's going on, and we talk a lot about fight, flight, freeze, flop, and fawn, and what happens in your brain when you are kind of in that anxious scenario, and what's happening in your body. And then we teach them therapeutic techniques. So we've got a huge array of different easy techniques that we teach young people to empower them, so that they can choose from their toolbox to say, right, well, I'm doing this, I'm going to use this because I know that it helps control my mind and it helps me feel better. And I love the fact that we give them a whole range of tools because, I think we all need a range of a toolbox of skills because, in different situations, you need different tools to kind of help you. But I would love it one day. I'm still on the lookout to find one skill that's going to help everybody. But actually, I just don't think I'm ever going to find it because, your brains are your own brain and you're an individual and this wonderful brain with so many neuroconnections. They still think they know more about black holes in space than they do about our brains and the reason, and why we do the things we do, which is incredible from a factual perspective. To think that really they know more about black holes in space than about our brain. And I just think your brain is a wonderful thing. I saw a podcast recently where the neuroscientist was holding someone's brain that had been, sadly the person had died and the brain had been put in formaldehyde, but she was holding the brain and she said every single thought, every single movement, every single feeling, every single thing that person has seen or heard or felt or smelt or everything is in my hands, is in this brain that is in our head, and we just don't talk about it very much at all. We often say, oh, I feel sad, or I feel this, I feel that, but we never talk about what the brain's doing and maybe why it's doing it.
Mm. 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 You mentioned something about teaching children about the fly, fight, freeze, and fawn response. Could you shortly explain, especially that fawn response, how it's manifested for children? Some of our audience
Yeah.
might be, having children, but also I know that the last response, the fawn, is recently has been discovered, and and it's the part of the people pleasing.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, we do teach a lot about fight, flight, freeze, flop, and fawn because I do think, once you understand that too, it's all of our emotions, those sort of anxiety or scared or worried, they're all part of that fight or flight. Most of the time, for most of us now, we're not, there's not lions chasing us, but years gone by, there might have been. And then it was kind of an obvious problem because if the lion caught you, then you were going to probably die. So we're lucky that we don't have that anymore. However, we have the same responses. So fight, let's say if a lion was coming towards us, we'd want to try and punch it to try and get out of the way. Flight, we run away and try and get as far away from that threat as possible. And what happens in your brain, so there's something called the amygdala, which is kind of protected. So it's kind of underneath the center of your brain, and it's about the size of an almond. And the amygdala is kind of in charge of that fight, flight, freeze, or flop. So what we explain to young people is that the amygdala will send signals down to just above your kidneys, and then cortisol and adrenaline will be forced around your body, giving you the power to fight or flight, like I've just explained. So punch the lion in the face or run away from the lion. Freeze, where we get completely frozen to the spot, and it doesn't just have to be physical. So sometimes if we're in a meeting and we're worried, you just forget what you're going to say and your brain freezes where you just can't remember anything that you're going to say. So we can have a freeze response, so either where our body completely stops and we don't want to move, or our brain, where we can't remember, let's say, our words when we're going on stage or we're in a meeting and you want to say something and you can't quite remember what you wanted to say. So that's the freeze response. And then flop, where your body completely kind of, the muscles relax so much that you flop onto the floor. Often, I saw someone recently who got some really sad news about their grandfather, and this young person was stood up at the time, and their knees just absolutely went melted. It was like their legs just crumpled underneath them, and luckily we were there and held them up. But and that's basically the flop response, where the body was like, oh, I just need to not be stood up right now, because at that moment it perceives, the amygdala really perceives you to be in so much threat that actually it's better that you're on the floor. You can also see some quite funny examples of it on YouTube too. I'm not sure if it was me, if I would put it on YouTube, but people have done, so I guess it's kind of okay to laugh, I'm not sure. But on roller coasters, well, there's a ride called a slingshot, where there's a video camera recording two people sitting in a very, not that I would ever go on them, but in a very scary ride, and they are flung into the air. And some people, you can see as they're putting their seatbelt on, that their breathing is already changed, and you can see their breathing is, they're breathing out of not very comfortably. Excuse me. But as they get flung into the air, they then, as they're screaming, pass out. And that's another example of the flop response, where your body perceives you to be in so much danger that at that moment it thinks that you're safer if you are passed out than if you are awake. So, and it's quite funny watching the rides, because then other people are like, oh, you're okay, oh, you're not okay, oh, it's okay. It's just quite funny. And then the form response, and I think for teenagers too, this is huge. And so the form response, you're absolutely right, is the over pleasing. Pleasing so much that it puts your needs to detriment. Your needs are not there. So teenagers, if they're, let's say for example, they're being asked to send photos of their body, which is something that teenagers are doing at the moment quite a lot, where they're kind of being pressured to send a photograph, or if you send me the photograph, I will, I'll be your boyfriend forever, for example, or something like that. And then young people are like, right, I know I shouldn't do it, but actually I want to please this person over and above my needs, so we'll send photographs. And it's a real tricky thing, because people like to please, and often with young people, teachers kind of celebrate those children that are offering to give out the books, or all those things, that kind of pleasing response. So you just have to be very careful and very aware of it, that when does it, like, of course it's really nice helping people, but does it change to that pleasing response? And I wonder then, if you are pleasing all the time, and I think pleasing so much that you don't really get reward out of it, you're always searching for more. It's always like this need to try and prove that you're okay, that you're worthy. And I wonder in later life whether that becomes something, that is very difficult to live with, when you try and please people. I mean, I think as an adult, I know that you can't really please people, and if they're not going to feel happy, then actually that's their choice. And trying to please someone is really quite difficult. And maybe if you learn as a young person the form response, and that's kind of what your body is kind of living in most of the time, I wonder if that later on in life has an impact. Which is why I think let's change the system. Let's change the way we're educating our young people and our children, to help them really know what's going on, and to let them analyze themselves, so that they can have a bit more of an understanding, so that they've got real choices, rather than just doing something because they've always done it and not really understood why. And I think these responses are huge in our life, and for your own personal kind of well-being, to notice when your body changes. And that's what we talk about all the time, like, has your breathing changed? Have you gone from being able to take deep breaths and really calm, and your heart feeling settled, and your body feeling settled, and feeling really at ease, to has something changed? If you can't please someone, for example, are you breathing differently? Is your body, do your hands feel sweaty? Have you got butterflies in your tummy? It could be so many physical reactions. And actually our body tells us quite a lot. So if you can notice those little things, and sometimes you can stop it before it gets to the really extreme, like panic attacks and things like that people are having so much now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, thank you. I just want, before I speak to what you shared, I want to welcome. We had a few people joining us live. Thank you, Charlotte. I hope I pronounced this name. I did my best. I really did. Thank you for joining. Please feel welcome to share the event. Click the link. The three dots above to share it, so we can all bring that energy of change in this space where we are discussing how to change the system, starting from children. That's from the basement. We were just discussing. You, Charlotte, you mentioned those 5 responses to a danger, which is fight, freeze, fawn, flop, flight. I honestly forgot about the flop one, but in all of those responses, it just makes me in awe how our body created it in order to survive, and how, like you mentioned at the beginning, the brain. People know more about the black space and then know about the brain, and I feel like we are getting there slowly, because you can have MRI machine to check the brain activation, but still they don't explain and show everything. There are those things which you see in mental health or any type of health, which are called miracles, like somebody is able to heal by changing the way how they breathe, and also think, what they visualize, that our brain doesn't recognize the reality from imagination. It's actually the same thing. So many more things, but as you were talking, I was curious if you would like to share a little more some of the techniques you are training. You and your team is training teachers, helping young children. You mentioned from the age of 4, you even are working with them. What are some of those techniques helping them to manage nervous system? You mentioned already, checking your breathing, and explaining why one day you wake up feeling this way, another day you feel this way. Could you speak briefly about that, which includes, I feel, a lot of awareness on how even we can apply that in our normal life, working with our nervous system, and as we are talking about the children, but I think it includes all of us, that anxiety, when we reduce the anxiety for ourselves, our children are going to feel less anxiety. Is that right?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I really do think, and especially young children, I think they copy us. Absolutely. They believe if you sit 15 centimeters away from someone, your cortisol levels in your body will match the person next to you.
Oh, wow.
I
Wow.
think,
15.
isn't that incredible?
15. Oh, wow.
15 centimeters, so just a short ruler. I think that's incredible. So if you think about people in classes or people in meetings, when you're sat next to someone, your body will be aware of the cortisol levels in the people around you. And if their cortisol levels are high, your cortisol levels will also rise. I think that is remarkable. And actually, remember, cortisol is all about protecting, your body. In a sense, it's putting you in that fight flight. Do I need to be aware? Is there any lions coming? Am I in danger? I think it's huge. So breathing is something that you can do yourself, which is so easy. If you think about it, we've never ever think about breathing until we can't breathe. Then everyone's like, can't breathe. But actually, from a day-to-day perspective, we hardly ever think about it. And it happens all the time, thank goodness. And obviously, we're really lucky that does. But really challenging yourself to breathe deeply is a real skill, and giving yourself time to kind of ground yourself. putting your feet flat on the floor and just giving yourself, even just 20 seconds to breathe deeply can help your cortisol levels reduce, which is great. Yes, I totally agree with you that children will match their parents and their friends and teachers. I've seen so many teachers turn up to a class after, having a difficult time maybe, and you can watch the class just change in attitude and everything because the teacher's behavior or anxiety is huge. So the more you can kind of really make yourself be calm. And I think the interesting thing is that you can't hide it. So our brains will be aware of the cortisol even if you are putting a smile on your face and trying to say everything's fine. People will just know that something isn't right. And the techniques we use then, so we've got lots and lots of different ones. And please, if anyone would like to follow us, so we're on Instagram. So our company is called briym, Building Resilience in Young Minds. So BRIYM for minds. And we put techniques out all the time. And we've got techniques on our website too, on the parent page of the website. So that's www.briym.co.uk. People either forget the I, or the Y for young, but it's Building Resilience in Young Minds. And we've got lots of them. They're all practical and they're all really easy to use. And that's what I like about them too, is that actually you don't need to change your life. You don't need to be in therapy for hundreds of hours. Actually, this is very much more about trying to catch people younger, catch people before huge trauma happens. Now, don't get me wrong, of course, we need to have people to speak to sometimes. And if there's a trauma that happens, then absolutely we need to talk about it and we need time to kind of be able to deal with that trauma. But for the majority of society, if we could teach them these techniques and allow them to, really understand their brain, then I think we could do a huge amount in kind of stopping future mental health issues occurring. And I think that's what's really great, like building this resilience, like teaching young people that actually we do need to find some resilience. The situations that you've been in your life, love, have been tricky, but you are so resilient at being able to survive and being able to thrive and being able to not let the life that maybe came around you, to damage you. You've been able to walk away and change it. And I think, really empowering young people. So there's lots and lots of different techniques. One of the ones we use all the time is something called tapping, it's either called emotional freedom technique or tapping, and that's just fab. It's a really, it's based upon tapping on acupuncture pressure points, and and it's great for children because sometimes they don't know how they feel. And I think that's quite difficult, if you've got someone saying, tell me how you feel, and they're like, I don't know, I just feel rubbish. But if you can use tapping, actually you don't need to focus on the feelings. You can talk about, the issues and things, and it's a great skill to be able to tap. And for us too, I use it all the time. So if I'm just having a day where, I don't know, like my children at school, or I haven't made packed lunches, or I don't know, something that's just a bit stressful, and then I'm on my way to work, and, as you know, I'm a therapist, and generally I'm very happy. I tap sometimes. So in the car on the way to work, I will do some tapping to help regulate myself and get rid of any cortisol that's hanging around me, to make sure that I can be really calm and kind of match my lots of different ones. We do some bilateral techniques too, which is about using both sides of your brain. Really, if you hold something in your right hand, the left hand side of your brain's working. When you kind of confuse it a little bit, then you can do some great techniques to allow you to be more consciously involved rather than letting your subconscious take over, which is the part that really is the fight or flight is very active in. So the more conscious we can be, the better we can feel as well. So there's a range of techniques, all different ones, and all kind of fun. And we have a 7-week package where it's half an hour a week that we work with a young person, and we will teach them all the different techniques, and trying to also make sure that their brain is feeling positive, because I think that's the other thing, is that we, as a human being, we are negative, and we have to be, because that's what keeps us alive and keeps us aware of dangers. But what can happen is it kind of can overtake. So they now think that the ratio of positive comments in our brain is 12 to 1. So if we say something not very kind to ourselves, we've got to say 12 kind things, 12 nice things in our mind to get back to zero. That's not even feeling good. That's just being okay. And if you think about how many negative things you might say to yourself in a day, you're probably all very in need of some real positive affirmations to say to yourself to improve your mental well-being.
Thank you for sharing those techniques, and we are going to add the link in the comment section as well, the link to your website for briym, and also make sure to click on the icon if you are watching it live right now, Sanji and Glenn. You can click Charlotte picture and it will allow you to message her directly without, you will not lose us, don't worry. You'll be able to message her, and this way you stay connected. And when you were talking about 1 to that ratio, 112, like that's huge.
Yeah.
Just to feel, okay, like,
Yeah.
and 80, or I think it's Joe Dispenza who made this research on like around 87.5 thoughts, percentage of thoughts we have every day are the same we had yesterday.
Yeah.
So that rumination, also
Yeah.
explains I feel like many things related to what we are talking, anxiety, and I can see how. Go ahead.
No, I said I agree. Please keep going.
And I can see how the tapping can get us out of the head and be more in our body and not analyze it so much, then just be with it. And where do I feel that, like, is my stomach upset, is my tummy making sounds, all that, which those somatic sensations which are there, but many times we don't pay attention because we are not taught to. We are taught to, answer the question and how do you feel? Great, bad, and it's like this fight response instead of checking up how am I feeling? Like, what's going on? Why do I have tension in my arm? Why do I have pain in my arm every time I talk with this person? Or like pain behind my neck? I mean, somewhere behind my ear. And those sensations are signals. This is our body communicating as language. That's the body language. And there's a great book, The Body Keeps the Score, dives really deep into the neuroscience and cases of how the body tried really super hard to communicate. And many times it manifests through diseases like, PTSD is one of them. When we get that energy being really stuck and in our nervous system, which, it's also from another perspective, is our body trying to survive. So it creates this way of surviving, of not remembering some certain things, and it's just the body trying to regulate over and over again the same situation which happened in the past and trying to find a solution. And so it's bringing it up. We get triggered, and that's the moment we should all go to therapist and get a help instead of doing something else, watching TV or drugs, alcohol. It's just temporary. It's going to not solve the problem. And what I wanted to mention here was we went too far away. I always, when I start to go too far, I'm like, where we are? Hello. Yes, I wanted to share this experiment. It was this experiment. You probably all know about it, but I'm going to mention it. How those research great people, I love all the research people, they had 2 glasses of water. And actually, I think it was an ice. They froze that water, and they were, this. Do you know this?
Yeah, I think I do. But keep going, love.
No, but go ahead. I would love you to finish if you have that.
I think, are you saying about where?
Yes, speaking.
They froze the water, and then one glass they spoke kind things to it for a week, and then the other glass they spoke mean things to it for a week, and then they looked at it under a microscope and saw the different. Is that right? Is that what you're going to talk about?
Yes, yes. And what happened after that week?
So the water that was all the beautiful shapes that you would get under a microscope when you're looking at water were beautiful in the bit that have been spoken nicely to for the week, but the one that where it'd been mean were all broken and all fractured, and there wasn't the beautiful shapes anymore.
Mm. Can you repeat that last one? The one in which they spoke the positive thoughts?
So the positive thoughts, they were beautiful. They were
Right.
like these through the microscope, looking at these beautiful shapes of, the wonderful things like you see on ice, the lovely shapes. And then in the negative one, they were all broken and fractured, and it's horrible. And if you think about it, isn't our body like 80% water? And
Yes.
so if we're saying things like that to it, it's going to be fracturing the water inside of us too.
Yeah, and it's unfortunately, I mean, fortunately, unfortunately, it's all connected.
Yeah.
And it's how the disease is manifested, how the mind, when we don't take care of it, it finds another way to channel that, to scream. Like it's actually, in some way smart, because it's like, okay, you don't want to, you don't get enough sleep, you don't get enough peace during the day. I'm coming with the anxiety and insomnia. You still are not listening. Okay, I'm going to come up with some really bad stomach ache or bad, pain or headaches. And I do remember, being a child and having those migraines too, because sometimes, in my system, I was doing this to get the attention from, from my parents and my surround people around me. And I wonder um, how much that need of feeling important and attention is there for the children you have the blessing to meet, and your team, like behind that anxiety and all that what we spoke.
Yeah.
And how to help them to manage that nervous system when it comes to feeling invisible, feeling not important, and all that suicide idealization coming out of it later on.
I think that I think number one as well, it's really hard being a parent, and I think lots of parents try their best, but I think the needs of human beings are huge, and quite often our needs aren't met. So we kind of we search for people reassurance in the people that we love, and sometimes when that's not able to be, really difficult for that young person, and they grow up then searching for people, and weirdly, what from a psychological perspective, I think that we search. So if you're, say for example, your father has been not very, or a person who behaves similar to your father, to see if you fix that. And I think that's incredible that our brain would design, our brain would design.
Or I'm losing you. I'm not sure.
Someone who has treated us in the same way, to see the need that
Something was breaking, and I wasn't sure if that's just on my side. Are you still in the same place? Just making sure the connection and everyone can hear you, because this is what you're sharing is very important. I just want to make sure I get.
So let's, for example, we've got a vacant. Is it still all right, love? Can you still hear me?
Right now, yes. Go ahead.
If we have a vacant father, then it's like we search for a person who behaves the same way, because we're searching for that person to not be vacant anymore. And so we copy, kind of without even realizing, people that were in our lives that didn't really give us what we needed, and then we're sort of searching to try and fix that. And I think that's incredible, because there's all that, all the research isn't there, and all the where people go from abusive relationships to more abusive relationships, and actually is that coming from a need from their childhood, which again is why I think we need to change the system to try and get people to understand what what are their actual needs, because if we knew them, then maybe we had more of a choice. And I think that's the other thing, that it's all very subconscious, so we don't really notice, or we don't really know what's going on. And the desires that we have are so kind of hidden in us that it's quite tricky to figure that out, really, without obviously doing therapy and stuff, which is great. But as parents, I do think it's the hardest job in the world, bringing up other human beings. I think it's very difficult. And there's a wonderful poem, it's a bit rude, it's by Philip Larkin, and basically it's called, excuse me for swearing, but they fuck us up, they do. And it's about parents, really, and how the issues that they have, they pass on to their children. So it's you'll have to look it up, but it's a brilliant poem, and it really describes what we're talking about, where you need in you that you never had met when you were a child. Maybe you then, if you don't with it, you basically pass that on to your children, because your needs still haven't been met. And then basically the poem says, that you'll take on their problems and add some more for yourself as well. So it's kind of like all our issues are kind of growing and growing and growing, really. But it's a brilliant poem, and it's funny. But it's a bit awful at the end, because it said, don't have children yourself. And I think children are wonderful, and it's a great thing, a great honour to be able to have children. But the poem itself is actually quite good.
If you want to, I invite you to find this poem. I actually pulled it up here. I have in front of my eyes. But at the end, as we're getting to the end, if you want, you can read it, at least a few verses of it, if you want. But otherwise, people can just find it. But where I was going with how they, excuse me, fuck us up. With the idea of the breaking those cycles, because that's why we met today, guys. Changing that generational energy. I would say like some kind of, we're born here many times without agreeing necessary for all that what is around us. And as we are brought in this world, we see things and we take them for normal and how they should be. And then as we grow up, get out of our villages and towns, we see different cultures, and we are like, oh wow, people do the same thing different way, and some people call this yellow and some people call this light yellow, and all that, how we all have different reality. But where I'm going with it is that how we can all be part of that change, so it's not just parents feeling, oh, it's all on us, and feeling like that self-attack of, I'm doing exactly what my mom used to do, even though I always told myself I'm never going to be like my mom as a parent. But we end up doing it because it's subconscious. It's nothing we choose. It's nothing. And there's really, the compassion can help so much. I see that in my own healing, and the people I had the pleasure to work with and interview for my documentary, that the compassion and the village, the idea of having people support who are celebrating you and seeing the good in you as you are changing, as you are in that transition. I found it so helpful, and I wanted to know a little more of your thoughts on changing the system when it comes to us being witnessing things. We are all living around schools and children. So what are your final thoughts on yes, go ahead.
I totally agree with you. I think connection is the most important thing for a human being, to be connected to somebody or some people. And I love it when I am able to connect with young people who maybe feel that everybody is against them, whether it's parents or friends. Or there's one young chap that I work with who is from a difficult situation, and I think he's fab, but everyone trying to teach him struggles. And I went into school last week, and we've had a summer holiday in England, so I haven't seen the schools haven't been open for 6 weeks. And as I walked across, and he's in year 11, so he's kind of 16 years old, very he's just someone who doesn't really speak very nicely to many people. And as he saw me, he clapped, and it was just such a lovely thing that he sort of came over to me and fist bumped me. And it was just, for him to do that is kind of huge, because he doesn't show anyone any emotion, or he doesn't let anyone see that he needs people. But of course he does. And I think that connection where you can have, a connection with somebody where they just feel heard and they feel listened to, if you can do anything for anyone, because actually it's not about us solving problems, because we've all got our own problems to solve, and we've all got the ability to solve our problems. But giving people the space to be able to discuss, or just being a friend who can be there to listen and not to try and provide an answer, and not telling people that they should do something or they should do this. I find should word very tricky, but suggesting if you want to. Sometimes you could do this, but sometimes not even having to say anything, and just being someone to be there to support that person and feel like that they're loved, really, I guess, and that they're supported, and that you've got their back, and that you're there for them no matter what they do, no matter how they behave. You are there, and they can count on you. I think it's a huge, fantastic thing to be able to give to people. And I love that part of my job where people that don't normally get heard or supported feel like you're there for them. It's really an honor to give people the space to listen to their inner thoughts and inner feelings, and trying to give them the support to help them manage those.
Yeah, I can see how you have become an ally for that
Yeah.
that young individual who will remember you.
I hope so.
And how we all can be part of it. And as we are getting to the end, is there anything else would you like to add? I didn't mention also. Thank you, our audience. Thank you for just being here, witnessing Sanjay Sharma. Thank you so much. And Khaled Burahalla. I hope I pronounced it. I'm doing my best. If you have any questions or feedback, or you can raise your hand, and now is the time. I could bring you to the stage. If there is anything would come up during our conversation with Charlotte.
Thank you so much for inviting me to do this too. It's been a real delight working with you, and I think you're amazing, and the things you're doing are so brilliant. And thank you so much as well, people, for tuning in. I really appreciate you listening to us and joining us.
And this has been the first. I would like to give you applause, like energetically, because this has been the first Link and Lean audio room live for Charlotte, and I know there is so many more coming, but the I want to celebrate that, and I wanted to say it at the end because I was like, nobody is going to believe that this is your first one. But yeah, that's the surprise. Ta-dum. I mean, you have such your voice, and
You're so kind. Thank you, love.
and I love the stories you brought, because of that young child. He represents, so many children who feel misunderstood, not just by parents, by the system, and they might have different, temperament, and then how do we respond? We as a society, like, although. Would you like to lastly talk about that? Because there is so many institutions created for people who are showing misbehaving and antisocial, and not necessarily those institutions are helping those children and putting them on drugs without the therapy. There is so much re-traumatizing those children. I feel like.
I agree. I think, yeah, I agree. I think that, being understanding, being able to see past the behavior, because the behavior is just the bit where someone's struggling. Being able to be kind, that thing where really being kind, right? Really seeing past whatever they're doing, because actually that's just a repeated behavior to try and see if you're going to leave like everybody else does, probably, to try and get people away from you. So really being kind and really listening and giving people, a safe space where they can be who they are, but also just, it's okay. Whatever is going on, it's okay. And let's sort it out. And, let's change it. So, yeah. It's been a delight talking to you, though. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let's finish with that cherry of delightful cherry of kindness, which is a challenge. Like, I will leave it as a challenge for everyone to be a kind to one person who is the hardest, for who it's the hardest to be kind to. And
that's a good challenge.
All right, everyone. Thank you all. If you're watching us on YouTube, at the replay on YouTube, you will see the link for Charlotte Hartley briym website. Please make sure to follow, see those techniques, methods for teachers, and for all of us to manage our nervous system. And also, if you are a teacher and would like to be part of this, do you have, Charlotte? What would you answer?
Yeah, please contact me. I'd love to hear from you. We're all teachers who are therapists. Some people don't teach anymore. But yeah, please contact me. All the details are on the website. So yeah, please come forth and get in touch. That'd be lovely.
All right, everyone. That was Charlotte Hartley, and the founder and CEO of briym. Thank you all for listening, tuning in, and you all have a the rest of your evening, day, wherever you are in the world. And that was the challenge. Be kind to a person who is the hardest to be kind to.
I like it.
Goodbye. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to Expose podcast. Please join us on October 3rd at 1 p.m. Pacific time for the upcoming premiere of the episode 3, Unmasking Abuse, Breaking the Silence. You can find the link in the description below. See you on the October 3rd, where you are going to watch not only the documentary, but also you are going to be able to participate in the open panel with some of the 88 thrivers from the Expose documentary and maybe make your own questions. See you soon. Bye!